Great. It is now the time to begin. So I will introduce myself. I'm Tucker Lieberman, and today I'll be talking about how to use your electric unknowing to lean into your personal essay. I'm hoping that you can all see me and hear me. It says that recording will start soon, so I don't want to give too much of my talk before the recording begins. Oh, good. Amethysta and Anna, hello. It still says recording will start soon. So I'm glad that everyone is here. You know, I know Amethysta and Anna from Medium. I'm excited to find out who's here, although if people want to stay anonymously, they certainly can. All right, I will just begin the talk because it can start recording whenever it chooses to. So I'm Tucker Lieberman, and today I'll be talking about how to use your electric unknowing to lean into your personal essay. I'll speak for 15 minutes, and while I'm talking, feel free to type any questions in the chat, and at the end of the talk, I'll review the questions you've typed. I hear there are some technical issues with Q&A today, and that we're supposed to use a chat function instead. Personally, I only see a Q&A function, so if I don't answer your question, it's probably because it flew to outer space and I didn't see it. Don't stress about that possibility. In fact, if that happens to you, get excited because you have a nice excuse to email me personally after this presentation and say hello. So let's agree we won't sit here worrying about whether Q&A is working. We'll just be open to whatever happens. Because you found your way here, I'm assuming you have a basic idea of what it means to be transgender and what gender transition is. I transitioned during my senior year of high school in 1998. And if you want to know the nuts and bolts of gender transition, you could talk to someone who's doing it now and you'd get more useful modern information. I'm speaking from the perspective of 25 years later. This is how I'm living my life. And I'm assuming you're open to hearing a trans person speak. Anyone, trans, cis, people outside that binary, can find these ideas useful. While my substance may speak a little more directly to trans people, I think that cis people can learn from listening to this dynamic, a trans speaker with an audience that includes trans people. So everyone's welcome to find here what you will. All of us know ourselves right now and what we're good at. And we don't know our futures and whatever we're not experts in. People often question us, trans people, by demanding our expertise on our gender and then denying that we have any expertise. It's a relentless, how do you know? Are you sure you're trans? Are you sure trans is real? In giving this talk on knowing and not knowing, I'm playing with that idea. We as trans people are constantly being interrogated. We're always being asked why the thing we know is trans or why we're allowed to say the thing we're saying. Well, for the purposes of this short talk, it just is trans, and we just are allowed to share it. I'm telling you explicitly that if you are a trans writer, you can, if it's safe for you, be openly trans. You can assume the right to speak, and you don't have to answer every invalidating question that's put to you or that you anticipate will be put to you. If you heard Coach Tony's keynote presentation today, you heard him say, by definition, every single person is an expert in their own life. There you are. So my first topic is what you know and can act on. Years ago, one of my writing teachers, explaining how to write an essay, lifted his hand as if he were holding a jewel. He said, turn the essay in your hand as if it were multifaceted and could catch the light. He meant you can polish your message with multiple angles. We usually claim some self-knowledge of our gender or sexuality, and when we name it, with or without experimentation, it can be like claiming a personal brand. Often we just want to classify who we already are and know ourselves to be. And by the way, the label transgender man works for me. You can refer to me simply as a man. You can use masculine pronouns for me. That's how I live. You can also refer to me as a trans writer if you want, because that is also true, and I don't mind if people know. I knew that visibility as a man with a transgender history and that dating as a transgender man would be complicated. I've gotten to find out exactly how it's been complicated for me. This has been part of my trans knowledge. Also, as a person who is transgender, I know that transphobia is wrong. I just know it. How do we know when we know something? It can be a feeling in the body, like familiarity, like unwillingness to entertain a falsehood, and on and on. Knowledge can feel like solidity, like grasping a rock. A tool gives us power, and we in turn control what we grasp. We can use it for good or evil. We can equip ourselves with it and ready ourselves to use it. And your reader may want to act on what they learn. And so when you have types of knowledge, you can use that to structure your essay, often in conventional ways. So here's a few writing prompts, what you know and can act on. You can tell us where you are now. What are you positioned to do there? How long have you felt this way or held this belief? How solid is your knowledge? How do you assess it? What do you see when you look inward, when you look outward? Which knowledge do you share with others and which is unique to you? What's right, what's wrong in this situation? What tools can you use? Who's on your side? Who's against you? But now I really want to focus on the unknowing, what you don't know and might learn. We often think of not knowing as an opportunity, and it is. But often it's presented rigidly. We're in a classroom or workplace. We're supposed to learn a predefined fact or skill that someone else already knows and wants to teach us. And there's wisdom in the saying, I know that I do not know. That's humility. It's a wise unknowing. We can also have what I call electric unknowing. That's an openness to grow, not only an openness to learn or become a specific thing, but openness to grow in directions we haven't even imagined yet. Unknowing becomes electric when we let ourselves be changed by it. The unknowingness is a way in which we're alive. It's a future that hasn't been determined yet, or a future we can't see into. The unknowingness and all its potential is part of us. Unknowing can be wonder, awe, creativity, openness. We know that we don't know many things, and we don't yet know exactly what we'll learn. The hope of there being something to learn is the hope that we can grow, stay connected and engaged, and do something significant. When we write an essay, we write about what fascinates us, and we try to hook the reader too. Is fascination a knowing or an unknowing? Maybe you're sharing an unknowing, something learnable, and for the moment just out of reach. For example, I could ask, how has my experience of being a man been affected by being white? That's a big question for me. I don't know the whole answer right now as to all the ways in which my whiteness affects my life, but it's learnable and I'm responsible for learning more. And what I allow to draw my interest changes how I show up. I can actively sit in an unknowing and explore it, and an answer might appear. Gender unavoidably deals with stereotypes. It means category. But that doesn't mean I sit around for 25 years thinking about what gender stereotypes I fit. Trans people instead often talk about feeling most at home in a gender where we feel we have room for growth. We know we're going to change, so we designate a space to do it. However you label yourself, that label can be like a home for your ongoing change. So when I write about transphobia, I never think the transphobes might be right, but I sit with certain things I don't know. How transphobia ticks, what people think they're doing when they're being transphobic, whose purposes or what political projects this really serves, and how trans people can live our best lives. Transphobia has inherent stakes for trans people, and my goal when I'm writing is to reveal those stakes to the reader. For me, that's electric, and there's a fascinating, although dangerous tension about it. There's knowing and unknowing. So some prompts for the unknowing. When you write your essay, you can grab the structure of what you know and unstructure it with what you don't know. You can tell us, is there room for growth here? What can you possess? What could you lose? Do you sense the direction of motion? Who's at the center of this situation? Is anything here useful? Is there a physical sensation? Why did you come here? And where would you look for the answer? So I'm halfway through. I will check the questions for a moment. Nope, not yet. Okay, I will just continue for a few minutes. So next I want to talk about obstacles. What's been standing in your way? Sometimes we see our own transness as a mystery that presents itself as an obstacle. When we first come out, we'll call ourselves by a trans-related label because we're naming the transition we're about to make. A couple years later, we might feel our transition is complete. And then the question arises, are we still trans? In what way? Well, yes, there are important senses in which the transness won't disappear. There's the historical fact you did a gender transition and it was a big part of your life. Your body's still trans. People you told about it remember that you're trans. They do not think of you as cis. And as a trans person, there are certain things up with which you will not put. For example, you don't have time to hear that your gender isn't real. So if you're a writer and you're trans, in one sense, you're always and forever a trans writer, even 25 years after transition. In my life at this moment, I need to show up that way. I'm okay being known as a trans writer on Medium. You, if you want, can position yourself as a writer who just happens to be trans and doesn't want to talk about being trans. Personally, that didn't get me very far with personal essays or any other kind of writing. A lot of the electric impulse of what I want to say, whether I start out knowing this or not, ends up being tied to how I'm trans. And my own transness can be generative creatively if I accept it and lean into it. Of course, not all transphobia is internalized. Others give it to us directly too. People tell us our gender is fundamentally flipped backwards and wrong, and that we trans people are misrepresenting basic facts. So a lot of this is just prejudice that is trying to diminish us, and you don't have to let it intimidate you from speaking altogether. I'm asking what's standing in your way. It might be transphobia or racism or sexism, or it might be something else. For example, explaining what trans is it something I did 25 years ago? Is it something I'll be forever? What if someone who's believed for years that I'm cis suddenly realizes I'm trans? What will happen between us? What if I've believed all my life that being trans is a social limitation? Do I want to risk finding out what's possible for me? We may use the metaphor of a roadblock or the metaphor of stuckness. The world pushes back at us, but we can realize doors are always closing and opening. And you can do that when you write an essay too. Think of the essay itself as having doors you can open and shut, and then you're less blocked, less stuck. You just look for the door. And the place we've paused might turn out to be not an obstacle, but a destination in itself. It's not a failure to be somewhere else or someone else. It's where we are and who we are. Over 4 years, I've written 400 stories on Medium. Those that generate most reader interest are about transphobia. I didn't know when I first started on Medium I had anything to say on that topic at all. I got into this groove with a story called Empathy for Cis People. It was a very long rant about parts of my experience that seemed obvious to me, but apparently were not obvious to others. And once I talked about this disconnect in great detail, the idea wasn't blocking my path anymore. Also, as a bonus, readers love this essay. So it was good that I leaned into that idea. Some writing prompts about what's been standing in your way. What fact doesn't someone else know about you? What are they aware of, yet misunderstand? What took you a long time to discover about yourself or about someone else? Why do you believe you lack certain expertise or opportunities? What has been so obvious to you that you've never tried to explain it before? If you viewed your roadblock from a distance, what would it look like? And when you've tackled the obstacle, look back. What failed? What succeeded? Moving on to your electrifying insight right now in this moment. People sometimes assume that writers need to find our insight. I don't think of it quite that way. An insight is a feeling to be followed, an imperative. It might not be a treasure to be found. It's already alive. It's something that electrifies you. And gender and literary insight can both feel like kinds of motivation. They're ways of being alive, feeling my way through the world. There aren't really reasons why they're correct. They aren't opinions, they're the basis for opinions. So if you have a sense of what's sustaining you right now, that's your electrifying insight. It's a passion with which you write. Yes, it will be work, writing's work, but your fascination will fuel it. The true motivation is already humming within us and around us, exactly where it needs to be. So what's your insight? What's the energy of being interested in something? Where would you rather be right now if not listening to me at Medium Day? That other thing you want to do is what electrifies you right now. So you can go write your essay. Tell us what you're hungry or thirsty for, what calls you toward it. Tell us about the forest or river you're crossing. The weird dream you had in the moonlight, what's infuriating or what's ticklish, what gradually turns itself inside out the more you gaze into it. Tell us what you can't stop revising. And one more, the last topic, what will change? The only thing that's certain is change. Something will change, but what? And after it changes, what will it be? So I'm talking about gender transition 25 years later. One change is complete, but something's always changing. Who we are is not only who we've been, but who we'll become. Our selfhood positions us to show up and live through more changes. Some we choose, some chosen for us, some that just happen. And everyone has anxiety about some kind of change. Transphobia takes this normal human anxiety and projects it onto trans people as if we were the mythic originators of instability. As trans writers, many people expect us to explain what change is, how change is possible, and why we claim the autonomy to do it. You may not need to apologize or give a how or why. Just talk about change. Change is human, change is motion. There are different ways to represent it. Imagine you know the answer and name it. The change can be like a door, something standing in your way until you shift the way you're standing. And then it's not standing in your way anymore. Only you know what the insight is. So start with what happened. Tell us about the inertia and when something began to move, the old identity and when you realized the new one. What's undetermined, what's predictable, your reality today, and what you want instead, your achievement and what signaled you'd done it, the facts and your interpretation, what happened and how you reconcile with it, what will happen and how you'll embrace it. I will open it up and take your questions now. Now, there are, I think, reportedly some issues. Oh, I have to approve some of those. Amethyst and Anna. I have approved your hellos, so now they show up in the chat. It is possible that the chat is not working, in which case I will not receive anyone's questions, but people are warmly welcome to find me at my website. There's a contact form on my website, tuckerlieberman.com, and there is also Medium. You could leave a comment on one of my articles and then we'll be in touch. The last 6 articles I wrote are all on this theme of electric unknowing. So the ideas I delivered just now, you will find on Medium. Well, hello.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, it's great. Surprise. Hi, Tucker. How are you? I wanted to ask, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to ask, in your process of electric unknowing, how do you edit with that, using that process? Because I see it as something that's sort of dynamic and you're constantly unpacking something. So, when I write about an experience, normally something that's kind of traumatic, I'll work through it through my writing. However, if I'm constantly unpacking it, it's kind of that editing process. I'm constantly changing. If I'm constantly going into like this unknowing and I'm learning more about myself, and so I can't get that piece to ever finish. I can't get it to ever be this final form because I'm constantly, questioning myself throughout the writing process, and you can see that in the writing. But I can't get to this final form if I'm constantly unpacking and so I asked you, how do you get to, in your editing process, how do you get to that final form in this state of electric unknowing?
Yeah, that is one of my challenges. I have a very hard time being done with any project. And my articles do tend to be longer form for that reason. Some people have said that my books are also a little too long. But that, that's subjective. It's what the reader wants, right? In part, it's how long you need to say what you need to say. First of all, how long it takes you to unpack it. And some ideas, some great ideas, take a long time because they're new. No one's come up with this idea before. If it were off the shelf, you could publish it tomorrow, but you're coming up with something and discovering something new, right? And making art out of it. So it'll take you a long time to know what it is and to do it. And the finished project may also be long. It may just take a long time to explain it. I think giving yourself permission to go through the process you need to go through, first of all, is important. There's no reason.
I mean, yeah. So like meandering can just be a style then, and I don't have to get anywhere.
My meandering articles have actually been successful on Medium. People seem to like the rant, or at least the way I do the rant, right? That works for me. It doesn't work for everyone. Some people are better with shorter form articles. But you certainly have permission to do that. If you're frustrated with the length of time it's taking, that's something else. Then you might want to change something up. Sometimes if you decide it's time to hit the publish button, then you have to get it to a good enough state, right? And that can be hard because that's a letting go of something that doesn't maybe feel entirely finished, but you won't know until you've published, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. Well, I thank you for that. I appreciate your talk.
Thank you for tuning in, Joaquin.
Oops.
Let me see who is here. There are requests lighting up on the screen, and I'm learning how to use it. So that may be the end of the questions, or at least the ones that have arrived, which is fine. What happens if I do this? I have hit a new button. I did announce Q&A. That is fine. I am glad that so many people came, and I hope you've gotten something out of this. And you are all welcome to find me on Medium or elsewhere on the internet. I am really enjoying this day, and I hope we see each other. Take care.